Hey everybody, thrilled to be here with Stevenson Dominique of Northwestern Mutual in Boston. And you know, starting the year off, a lot of people are looking at, do we want to be a homeowner? And not just that from a financial perspective. Certainly that's our lens, right? Yeah. But Stevenson, help us understand what services you provide to people, whether or not they want to be a homeowner, in terms of that big picture financial analysis.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the biggest services that, working with a professional financial advisor is really help you out map the whole dream out. Mm-hmm. It might be buying a home. What does that look like? And once you get that home, how does your budget change from that point on?
Sure.
When you go from renting, where you're not responsible for anything to break, but then you buy a house next day, everything's your responsibility.
Yeah, yeah.
So those changes people, it's like a aha moment once they're in the house for 30 days. Doesn't hit them, but we kind of help people plan ahead so they know exactly what life will look like once their dream is achieved.
Yeah, I think I like how you laid it out as a dream, because one thing that we always look at too, of course, is someone who wants to be a homeowner, right? But that's just a piece of the puzzle, right? What are your overall goals? And a lot of times people perseverate on, oh geez, interest rates are X, and well, first of all, if you're renting, interest rates are 100%, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a homeowner, how does it fit into your in particular picture, right? Is it something that makes sense for you to be a multifamily owner, to invest in a condo, a single family, and looking at that big picture? So is there an ideal time that someone should come and talk to you, or is there a non-ideal time? What does that look like, of sort of your ideal way to be able to guide people through this?
The earlier the better, I would say. Even if you're planning to buy something, even 10 to 15 years, the earlier the better, the easier it is to plan, and the less change you gotta really make on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah.
When you plan ahead.
Yeah.
And there's really no ideal time, but I will say there is some times where people look back and have regret that they didn't do it earlier.
Sure.
Because we can't predict where the market's gonna go, where house prices are going, where interest rates gonna go. But if your life situation has changed, where buying a home becomes more important to you now, let's say early 30s compared to your mid 20s.
Sure.
Right? You had wanted to have saved in your 20s. So you can actually then act on that dream.
Sure. Now, we keep going back to buying a home. Certainly we're sitting in a real estate office. What are some other pivot points or times in life? And I can appreciate if the answer is there's never a bad time, right, to lay out the next leg of your future. But are there other key moments or milestones that people should be looking at as an ideal time to sit down with you?
So I would say ideal time outside of buying a home is like when you start your career. Right, or a career changes, because then it might, good or bad, income might increase or decrease. But then the biggest thing that most of my clients are thinking about is how do they make the most out of this either increase of income that they have.
Sure.
Right, so it's a good time to talk then, but sometimes income might go reverse. You might get, we were talking earlier about, the idea of burnout. You do something that's a little bit less taxing, you might cut your income, but it'll be a good time where, hey, you might be able to afford to do that.
Yeah, right. Right, might be able to afford to do that. You may look at options to refinance. I know oftentimes we look at people who, whether it's unfortunately, death, divorce, or kids going off to college, or, if we go back to that burnout, people are looking to retire, a little bit sooner, or maybe be surprised as to when they could do it, right?
Yeah, and we call those life events, and they're gonna happen, and sometimes they're predictable, and sometimes they come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? No one necessarily expects a life to change immediately, where a death of a spouse, or of a change of a job or loss of a job.
Yeah.
So it's always important to kind of go ahead of it, because we can never time it perfectly.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned earlier that I think is certainly beneficial too is life insurance, right? Yeah. And it's that element that people don't want to think about, don't want to think about that ever may be a reality, but now's the time to plan for it. We look at the time of buying a home. Right? I would assume that's an ideal time to look at life insurance?
Yeah, that's absolutely an ideal time, especially if there's a dual income or a single income, because if one of the spouses are no longer there, that house overnight becomes unaffordable.
Yeah. And
typically what happens then is that, unfortunately, that dream home, you got put on the market.
Yeah, yeah.
So we always like to think about, hey, what would you want to happen if you didn't come home?
Yeah.
And then one of the things people mostly say is like, we want to make sure that, my family's life doesn't change.
Sure.
So we like to kind of do an analysis and look at, out of all the stuff we have on the balance sheet, if that income were to go away, how much we would need in place of life insurance, death benefit, to cover that.
Sure. Yeah.
And it changes, because your first home might be one amount, and you get a second house, which is a little more expensive. So I think people forget sometimes, they look at life insurance particularly as a set and forget it thing.
Sure.
They don't
Yeah.
think it evolves over time.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, as you age and you get closer to retirement, life insurance evolves where your home might be paid off, but now you might need life insurance for a different reason.
Sure. Well, I think, not to oversimplify it, but I think you and I could have a long-standing sort of general conversation, right? And we're looking at life events, we're looking at planning for the exciting future stuff and looking at planning for the what ifs, right? And I think what it comes down to is there's never a bad time to reach out. There's never a bad time to get an analysis of your situation from one, what you have, and two, what your goals that you're looking to achieve, whether it's property related or not. So with that, we don't want to overgeneralize it. You should reach out to Stevenson, give him a call, get an assessment of your needs, and really look at what could be the ideal next step for you and your planning. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you stopping by. I know it'll be a valuable resource for our clients and a great resource to have a conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.